Alright, so welcome to my YouTube video, 5 tips on using FL Studio. So our first tip is going to be about getting around the interface. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. So you can go up here and click the buttons. But if you look over here on the side, we've got F5, F7, F6, and F9. Those are our shortcut keys. So what I like to do is I use a mouse and I go in here. It's a gaming mouse, so you can go and you can assign these to your buttons. So I've got my channel rack here, I've got my piano roll here, I've got a macro for undo as this middle button, Control-Alt-Z, and then on the side there I've got my playlist and my mixer there as my back button, and my sniper button is the control key. If we go in here, you can kind of see how this works. So I've got my playlist, mixer, channel rack, piano roll, and it's all really easy right at my fingertips. And using a mouse too, you can hold your middle wheel there and you can pan around your project. And what's nice about having the control key mapped to my sniper button is if I want to zoom in, all I do is hold my sniper button and scroll, and then I'm able to zoom. And another really nice thing is this. So you can actually hold control and do the same thing as panning with your middle button. But if you hold control, then it's adjusting the vertical space of each track. And actually, it's depending on which track you're hovering over, you can actually focus on that one. So let's say I've got an automation clip here and I want to focus on it. There you go. So my second tip is about using peak controller to control plugins. So how does that work? Basically, I've got my FPC set up here, my drum controller. My snare is going one channel away, or one track away, so it's going there. And then my kick drum is going 2 tracks away. So there's my kick, there's my hat, 3 away. And once you've got your drums sent to their own tracks, you can send them away to do other things instead of, you know, having them all on one track. So I've got my snare and my kick going to my sidechain input. And here you can set up Fruity Peak Controller. So let's just delete this and let's find it, and there it is, Fruity Peak Controller. So now, turn it on. When this hears audio, it will make an impulse. It's not hearing the hat because the hat is going to this other track here. So you can adjust the tension, the decay, the volume here, and this will adjust the size of that impulse, but we'll leave it alone for now. And what we'll do is go in here to our input here. So my kick and my snare are going there. My hats and my chords are going to this input, which is the actual affected track. So we can go in here. I've got my parametric EQ 2. I like this one because it's very visual. You can see what's going on with the frequencies. But basically, right now, it's not going to do anything. So there's no sidechain effect happening at all. So what you have to do is click our sliders here. We'll go to link to controller, link it to peak, and let's see what happens. Put this frequency back down. So as you can see, it's actually 1-to-1 ratio for this value. So this is 0. Therefore, this is 0. So I prefer to put it on a different formula. You can go to inverted first half, tends to work the best for me. So now it's going to actually do what we want, which is duck that frequency out of the way. So let's set up the same thing on our high shelf here. Inverted first half, peak. Make sure that remove conflicts is not selected, otherwise this one will go away too. And let's put our frequencies down low so it really has an effect. And as you can imagine, that's really customizable. You can actually select it to duck. Let's say we want 885. We want that to be ducked as well. So you can go and link it and do this, inverted first half. And we can also scroll over this to affect the Q kind of setting. So now it's going to be really just that frequency. So that's kind of how the P controller works for sidechaining. And it's really not sidechaining, it's actually just taking that impulse and using it to affect things. And you can affect anything with it. So it's very useful. Let's say we want to affect a third-party EQ. All you have to do, and this goes for any third-party thing in FL Studio, you're going to want to tweak it, and then go to Tools, Last Tweaked, and then you have your options here. You can make automation clips, do whatever you want, link to controller, peak, inverted first half. So now my low shelf gain, turn it on. So the low shelf gain is now being on this third-party EQ. But we'll get rid of that. We'll turn this off, and we'll talk about sidechaining as FL Studio knows it. So basically, what you have to do is the same setup as before, but now you're actually going to have to take this track that your audio is going to, that you want to hear, you right-click, and you sidechain it to the one that you want to affect with that audio. So here we've got a fruity limiter, and so FL Studio is kind of different in that when you sidechain, you can only use effects that accept that input. So a lot of third-party effects don't really accept FL Studio's style of doing sidechaining, so you kind of have to use fruity limiter, and there's like a couple other ones that you can use as well that ImageLine has a write-up about. So you have to go in here to fruity limiter in the compressor side and right-click sidechain, and we want to be this one. So that's the one that it's going to take from and affect this track with. So now I don't know why it was on pause. So you can sort of play with our threshold, our knee, and our ratio here. So the knee is going to affect how fast it comes on. The ratio affects how much it does. You can actually set the ratio backwards so that the audio gets louder. So it's kind of a special deal here with Fruity Limiter, but it's less kind of precise in your frequency ranges, so I prefer to use the EQ method, but this one definitely has its uses as well. So let's go on to our third tip, which is just about MIDI controls. So I would suggest that you map your MIDI control buttons if you've got spare buttons. I've got 8 buttons here underneath all of my faders on my MPK 249, and all you have to do is go into your settings on your controller and you can map them to different things. So I've got my metronome, Control M, mapped to this one. My second button is the key L, which changes from pattern to song, which you can see up here. Then my third button is set to D for delete, and then I've got C for cut, and then P for pencil. And then this one is Shift plus F4, which makes a new pattern. And then the next one is escape, so I can get rid of the naming box because I don't name. And then I can hit record, and I can record stuff. And then I make another one. And that's kind of how that one works. So let's say I want to go here, and I have a new pattern. Got my metronome on. So there's my new pattern. If I want to make another one, hit those buttons, and now I'm able to make another pattern. Go back to my channel rack, and that's kind of how that all works. So my fourth tip is about automation clips. So I've got my song here, and let's say I want to go in here and I want to affect this. I want my chords to be louder, so we can go down here to create automation clip. But what I prefer to do in pretty much all of these right-click context menu scenarios is I like to click or hit the key that is underlined. So if you hit A, it's going to do that. So now I've got our automation clip here, and you can go to your first box here, right click. You could go down to click copy value, but if you just hit C, it's the same thing. And I've also got C and P mapped on my MIDI controller, so I can right click here and paste, and there you go. And it's right here. I'm just using my mouse and the button on my MIDI keys. So now I want to bring the volume down from the beginning, copy that one, paste it over here. And what's important to remember about these is your effects up here, whatever's selected here is going to change what happens. So if I've got it on step editing, rather than with that off, if you click, nothing happens. If you right click, you create a point. And you can also right click, delete the point with the letter D. But if you have step on, what it's going to do is allow you to make this kind of a deal. Undo that. So turn that off. And if you got slide on, it's going to change whether or not your points are sliding depending on when you move one. So if you've got that off, I can move this independently of the other ones. So that's kind of an explanation of how those work. Delete those. And again, if you really wanted to get precise here, you can really stretch it out. And if you look up here, you've got your percentage. So if I want this to be, exactly this, and this is really helpful for like effects. Let's say I don't have any effects. Let's put some distortion here. So if I want to affect the mix of this, tweak it, go to last tweaked, create automation clip. And so now you can really be precise about just how much of it you're doing. So let's just have that start loud and then go down. So there we go. Let's go in here, use my mouse. And another keyboard shortcut you can remember is Control and then the up arrow or the down arrow. So that will lower your selection by an octave. So that's kind of what Control plus up and down does. And again, having this sniper button as Control really allows me to be fast when I'm doing this kind of stuff in the piano roll. So my fifth tip that I want to talk about is getting third-party plugins to work with your MIDI controller. So if you'll notice, I've got my Vacuum Pro here. My pitch wheel is doing this, and it looks like it's not working right, but in reality, it is actually working correctly, and my mod wheel is working. But if we go into this other plugin here, they both work. But my pitch wheel, is not working right. So some plugins, it's really strange. You've actually got to go in here and adjust the range, and so now it will work properly. So the range is 12, but it's actually only doing 2. I don't know, it's very strange. And you can go in here to remote control. And we've got mod wheel, aftertouch here, and we've got our automation clip there, and our EQ here. But it's really kind of a mixed bag for getting these things to work properly. But you can always use this and go into override generic link, and this will be your pitch bend. And you can just go to override generic link, move your pitch wheel, and there you go. And for the mod, what you've got to do is go into this Omni mod wheel. You click it and move your mod wheel, and that's kind of how that works. Except, as you can see, it actually just, there we go. So now it's working. I thought it stopped working. It's very finicky and really sort of hard to figure out. Hopefully that helps, because this section here was really helpful for me in getting this to work. So now any plugin that I have selected, it's going to affect that plugin and not just one single one. So that's kind of what Omni does, and also that override generic link thing, if it doesn't just work out of the box. So that does it for my 5 tips for FL Studio. Thanks for watching.